Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. This is the second of several teachings about the discovery of self. And the group finds themselves at sunrise at Abu Sir, which was built in the 5th dynasty. That may mean nothing to many, but to consider there were over 30 dynasties and 3,000 years. The 5th dynasty is early, ancient. You were sitting upon a place that other humans used. In whatever way they wished, they used it to do the same kinds of things you are doing right now as you sit on this very place, in their own ways. They were using it to discover more about themselves so that they would be prepared for what they believed would happen when they passed. It was all about that, dear ones. The worship of the light from the sun. And this is why it is sunrise, and that is why it is important that it is sunrise, and you're here. For they did this. The sun was everything to them as it traversed the sky into the other direction. All of them, just like you, many, many years ago, trying to find that niche where they could discover so much more about that which goes on in themselves, after death perhaps. There was a story of woe that we were giving, and in this story we had him bogged down by sand, walking around as a metaphor for an old energy, and we told you that. This series, called Discovery of Self, may not mean much to many who look at themselves and say, I am aware of who I am. So there's nothing to discover here, Kryon. I've been around a while, and I know myself, and I know all about myself. So I would say to you, so you are one of those who knows everything. So there's no horizons past what you know. And they would come back and they say, well, of course, in science and all these things, you'd be right, but this is about me. And they might say, I know about myself. And I would say to them, no, you don't. Are you aware that there's so much more that has been imbued into your soul, which is standing there waiting for you to discover? So self-discovery never, ever ends. What you think you know is not the whole story. And that's the beauty of this message. Those who sat here before you had that very knowledge. They didn't know what they didn't know. And so they were willing to have more given to them by the priests who were here about one thing, and that is the light. In you, every single one of you carries more than you know. And what the ancients did not know here and had no concept of here was that someday there would be a shift in humanity many thousands of years. And that shift of humanity would create something within them, the humans, that would allow them not to just see the light, but to create light. This is the premise of the shift, an awakening to greater things than you knew or you expected. And those of you awakening are starting to realize it's new. These are things that have not been shared with humanity before. Woe is slogging through the sand, through the old energy, as eons did, the old energy of humanity. And as we told you in the last channeling, in this parable, Woe sees a group of people where the sand actually backs away from them as they walk. And he's startled. And he's told it is magic. And he's told to leave them alone. Because if they're not the sacredness of what the church teaches, they must be evil. But he's attracted to them because they're kind. They listen to him. They have compassion. They're not selling him anything. They're not asking him to join a group or to read a book. They're simply opening their arms. But he suspects he's not quite right about it. He doesn't know what the gimmick might be, what else they might have to trap him into perhaps another belief system. And so he stays his arm's distance, but he watches, and he watches. One in particular, a man who seems so kind and so alive, takes him aside and says, I can tell, Woe, that you are nervous here. And he disarms Woe so that Woe would even talk. And Woe said, yes, I am. I don't know what I'm seeing, and I'm a little bit afraid of it, and I've been told not to talk to you. And the man says, use your heart as your guide, even now. It doesn't hurt to talk. And so open the heart is from Woe as he listens to the man. The man says, I'll tell you what's happening with us. We have discovered an amazing thing, that God has created a human being who is magnificent, and we're only using a piece of it. That consciousness is energy. And part of the energy that has been given to us is sacred. And that's not what you're being taught in those religious leaders who teach you. They want to be the sacred ones, and they'll teach you that you are not. The discovery we have made is that God made us all sacred in his image. And we can do something that no one ever thought we could do. There is something called the field. And that is a field of other energy called consciousness of humanity. And it always is available, and it sits there waiting to be discovered and used. Think of it this way. Everything that's happening on the earth regarding consciousness is available because it's being thought of. Especially those things that may be troublesome, that you call chance. Woe, I am telling you that there is no such thing truly as chance when it comes to consciousness. What I'm telling you is chance is the result of doing nothing. That's when you step off the curb and a truck hits you. And many will say, well, if you had known even slightly the truck might have been there, you would not have stepped off the curb. And Woe says that's correct. He said, what if you had an intuition that in the field a truck was coming? And Woe looked at him and said, you mean precognition? And the man said, no. It's in the field. It's there for you to pick up. It's part of the gift that we all have. The sand recedes from us because we are in tune with the field. It's a flow. Think of it, Woe, as this. There is a road with many potholes. If you blind yourself and walk by chance, you may step in some of them. But if you take the blindfold off, you may be able to see them slightly. And it's like that, except instead of sight, you have intuition. Intuition to guide yourself in a flow of life where you will not step in the potholes. Woe couldn't believe what he was hearing. In fact, he didn't believe it. And the man said, Woe, we know it's a very, very odd thing. So go from this place and think of it. And think of these things. Do not come back unless your heart tells you to. Woe was impressed with that, because here was someone who wasn't trying to convince him anything and ask him to use his own heart and his intuition. And then the man looked at him and said, "There is so much more here, Woe, that I want to tell you about who we are and who you are and what God has given you. And so, Woe, use your heart and see love in me," the man said, "and come back if you wish. I have so much more to tell you about the field, about your magnificence, and who you might be." Woe left that place, and he pondered everything that he had heard. Could it be that you might be able to steer your life in a flow using the field, and that it was all part of self-discovery? And Woe realized if that was true, he really didn't know himself, and there was so much more. We're going to leave you with that, and see if Woe returns to talk to that special man, and see what else there might be that's magnificent that he didn't know about. The quest for these things is what the people were doing right here, just like you. Human beings searching, just like you. Perhaps at a sunrise, just like this one. And here you are, more than 5,000 years later, and knowing so much more about your magnificence and the truth and the light. There's more coming. And so it is.